Now, because of all of this awareness that saturated fats are not good for you, then the food industry has, gotten a hold of that and tried to create low-fat foods. Because if it's shown that fat is bad for you, then there was this whole thing, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, of low-fat foods. And so, for example, low fat means foods that are labeled as low fat or fat free. For example, if it's low fat, that means you take some of the fat out. For example, 1% milk versus whole milk. That milk is considered low fat because some of the fat has been removed. Fat free is when you take out all the fat. Sometimes they add back a fat substitute. Now, in the case of milk, like skim milk, it's just fat-free. They've taken the milk out, or you can have fat-free yogurt. But some foods, they add a food substitute. And I just threw down some names of some food substitute or fat substitutes here. For example, cellulose, we'll talk about that when we talk about carbohydrates. That's a carbohydrate that your body cannot metabolize, but it gives the texture of fats. Fiber, you can't digest most fibers. And then all these other starch-based, it's mostly modified food starch that's been modified so your body cannot extract the calories because the enzymes no longer recognize it. Protein-based, it's just like, for example, modified whey protein concentrate. It gives the same feeling and texture as fat. And then different emulsifiers. And then this one, Olestra, I'll talk about that for a minute. Olestra is a fat substitute that came on about 10 years ago. And what it is a sucrose polyester. So instead of having fatty acids chemically combined with glycerol, fatty acids have been chemically combined with sucrose. And sucrose is like table sugar. And so you have this big sucrose molecule, which we'll look at them later. It's kind of like this. And then instead of having hydroxyl groups, you have all these fatty acids stuck to the sugar. Now, because the fatty acids, the way they are bound to the sugar, the body doesn't have any enzymes to recognize this ester linkage here, so it just cannot fit into a normal enzyme. So this type of fat, it kind of tastes like fat and it has the feel of fat because of all these fatty acids, but it's not digestible because there's no enzymes. So the body, it just passes right through the body. So there's been all kinds of food science that has been done to try to make fat substitutes with varying success. And then cholesterol-free foods, those are cholesterol is found in animal fats. So, and one of the things cholesterol does in animal fats is it makes the fat more stiff. And so, for example, that sometimes is good when you're making something to have a stiff fat, for example, if you're making frosting or something like that. And so an alternative to using fats that were stiff that also contain cholesterol was to hydrogenate vegetable oils that did not contain cholesterol to get the same consistency but no cholesterol. Now that was all the craze 40, 50 years ago, this process of hydrogenation, where you take a fatty acid, which is typically a part of a triglyceride, and you an unsaturated fatty acid, and you hydrogenate it, which means you chemically combine by an addition reaction hydrogen. And when you by an addition reaction, then you just add the hydrogen, and one of the double bonds is removed because the hydrogens, are added to that double bond. So the carbons that were unsaturated are now saturated. Okay, and so if you have saturated fatty acids, you increase the melting point, and so what was oil then becomes a solid. For example, butter has cholesterol and saturated fat, and so that's been linked, to health problems. So what did was they took vegetable oil and added hydrogen to it to make margarine. So margarine was considered a great butter substitute. The problem was that they later found out was that hydrogenated fats are actually worse for you than the original saturated fats in the natural source. So what they thought was a better thing, so you could use margarine instead of butter, reduce your cholesterol. Actually, these hydrogenated fats are actually worse.